Welcome back to the Food52 test kitchen. Today we are boiling lettuce. A lot of people call iceberg lettuce crispy water, which is sort of true. But when we cook them, you can actually get some subtle sweetness out of the vegetable itself. And we're going to be pairing it with a really delicious sauce. And I'll be showing you how to doctor basic sauces and condiments so that you get a very well-rounded, cheap, quick meal. First and foremost, we're calling this in English boiled lettuce, but a more accurate translation might be scalding. So the Cantonese word for this is che, and the context I need to give you is boiled lettuce is oftentimes served at restaurants that usually serve noodles. When you order a noodle, you want a side of vegetable, you want your meal to be a little bit healthier. They have a big pot of delicious stock. They'll drag this lettuce through this delicious stock for a couple of seconds, take it out, put it on a plate, and then garnish it with this oyster sauce. This is a slightly more involved version where we're cooking our oyster sauce itself, but that's the context. The two lettuces I have in front of me are the iceberg lettuce, which is, some people think is relatively flavorless, but it's actually really quite delicious. And then romaine, which is also a similar type of lettuce, but it's going to be a little tiny bit more bitter. This one is also huge, so it's quite mature. So the romaine is going to cook a little longer than the iceberg. First things first, here's a bit of an iceberg. You don't want the center part, so we're going to cut this in half, and then we're going to rip out the center part, just the thing that's holding it together, and all of these leaves will come apart, and you're ready to go. Romaine, cut it open. You can just twist off the bottom. We don't need that. Same thing over here, twist off the bottom, and then you have individual leaves that will fall apart when they're cooked. I think going to the lengths to set all of this stuff up just to boil vegetables is a little silly. So I like cooking, I like making dishes like boiled lettuce if I already have water or stock or some hot liquid going. That way I'll just repurpose that after my main thing is cooked to make an additional dish. However, today we are doing a demo, so we have a little bit of water that's going to boil. Here, for this amount of vegetable, I'm only boiling about 2 quarts of liquid, tablespoon of salt that goes in. While this water is boiling, we can prep everything we need for the sauce, and we can actually start cooking, if not finish cooking that sauce. Let's talk about aromatics. 3 main aromatics in Chinese cooking: garlic, ginger, and scallion. This is a theory that borders superstition and filial piety. My dad says that whenever you're cooking vegetables, you have to pick between garlic and ginger. No chef has ever taught me this. Well, my dad's not a professional chef, but my dad did say both garlic and ginger are strong flavors. When you're cooking something delicate like a leafy vegetable, you want to pick one of those aromatics because you want one of those aromatics to shine. Both garlic and ginger in vegetables kind of overwhelms and covers each other up. This is the type of minute attention to detail that I really think makes simple dishes like this shine. For me, leafy vegetables like romaine, like iceberg, for me, garlic. So no ginger today because with the garlic, it'd be way too much. So let's deal with this garlic first. I like to smash my garlic because it's the easiest way to get them peeled. Smashing garlic means that you're, number one, rupturing the cell wall so the aromatics will be released. Second of all, you get to look inside to see if there's that little green shoot. If there is that green shoot, remove it because it's bitter. Keep that aside, go through the rest of your garlic. When I'm doing tasks like smashing garlic, I keep thinking of this line cook mentality. In order to do things efficiently, you want to do the same task over and over and over again. So in this case, what we're trying to do is we're trying to process this garlic, but really the steps are cut the end off, smash it, take the peel off. It's faster to smash all of the garlic, and we know this from professional kitchens, and then take all of the ends off and then peel all of them instead of smashing, taking the end off, and then peeling each individual clove of garlic. Now let's mince this garlic, cut them into rough chunks, and then I'm going to show you something popularized by one of the pioneers of Chinese television cooking, Martin Yan of Yan Can Cook fame. Just cut them into rough chops, anchoring the front of your cleaver for control in the beginning. As many of you know, the main knife in Chinese cooking is the cleaver. One of them is this thing we call the gallop chop. It's called the gallop chop because it sounds like the gallop. Basically, the technique is we are just chopping down with our right hand, right? We're bringing the weight, and we're using the weight of that cleaver to bring the blade down. Now, this is the basic one, right? But you can double the speed if you slightly levitate your left hand. The weight and the force of that downward motion is going to bring up the left side of your cleaver. It's going to hit your hand and bounce back down. And then you get a rocking chop. That's the garlic. Next, scallions. Of garlic, ginger, scallion, I think scallion for me is the baseline, and it is the most mild of flavors. I like to process it greens and whites separately. We're just slicing this into rounds. Keep that aside. Finally, the chili. Now, one interesting thing about chili that I have learned for Chinese cooking is that, yes, chili peppers are spicy, but you're not restricted to spicy dishes when it comes to using spice. The taste of chili isn't so much a taste in terms of flavor as it is a sensation. Flavor and taste are not exactly the same thing. Flavor includes a lot of other parts of our neuroprocessing, including our memories, for example, which is maybe the most abstract, but also things like the sense of touch and texture. In my opinion, that's what flavor is. A lot of our flavor is also based on our smell, our retronasal olfactory sense, which is us smelling basically from inside of our palate, inside of our mouth. Point is, a lot of Chinese cooking, especially Cantonese cooking that's not known for spicy food, will use a little bit of spice to build just a more well-rounded flavor. I'm going to activate it a little bit by just lightly tapping it down. And then we're just going to cut this into chunks. If we're really, really sensitive to spice, bird's eye chilies at the end of the day are quite spicy. You can take out the seeds. Garlic, scallion, chili pepper, that's all of our aromatics. Now, the other ingredients that we're going to need for the sauce is the base of it, which is oyster sauce. So, the other way to describe this dish in Cantonese is hou yao sang choy, so oyster sauce, lettuce. Oyster sauce is an important ingredient. If you're wondering what it is, basically, it was invented in the 19th century by the company that is now Li Kum-ki, by this guy called Li Kum-sheung. In essence, oyster soup that is reduced and boiled down until it's nice and thick and super umami and very savory, and then other additives and aromatics are added to it. So, if anything, the way I like to think about oyster sauce is the essence of oyster. The second ingredient addition to this sauce is going to be soy sauce, of course. Soy sauce on its own is really salty, but it's like a bright, sharp type of saltiness. You need to add things to it, such as oyster sauce and sugar, to make sure that it's actually real and delicious, and you can taste some of that soy flavor. Sugar, obviously here, white sugar, easiest thing to use. And we're going to finally need to be building a little bit of a cornstarch slurry, which is going to help us finish off and thicken that sauce to the right consistency. Here we always make a little bit more than we think we'll need because we're going to be adding this in stages. We are building this sauce on the side. By the way, we are cooking on stainless steel here. To get things not to stick into stainless steel, get the pan hot first before you add the oil, and then get the oil hot before you add the ingredients. This is neutral oil, flavorless neutral oil. Heating the oil until it shimmers, which means that it's at around 275, maybe 300. Best practice, things that burn last go first. So, onions, scallions, into the pot. Move it around a little bit. Once it starts to smell, garlic. Just cook this until you can smell everything. Afterwards, soy sauce. Stir that around, let it come to a boil. Oyster sauce. Bring that all together. Balance that flavor out, 2 pinches of sugar. Water, just to give it volume. And we're gonna bring this to a boil, bring this to a simmer so that all the flavors come together. Chilies go in just at the end for that color, for a little bit of that well-roundedness. We're going to make sure that our cornstarch is well dissolved. The sauce has boiled for about a minute, and that's more than sufficient for all those flavors to come together. Now, cornstarch in and of itself, the way starch works is, as this slurry, when it goes in, the starch molecules are going to swell with water and eventually burst because of heat. And when it bursts, it's going to cling on to everything else and bring them all together and hold it all together. Now, cornstarch itself needs to be added in stages because if you add too much, it'll get too thick. So whenever you add starch, add it to the surface, mix it in well very quickly, and just let it set and let it sit for a couple of seconds before you add a little bit more. Don't overdo it. The thickness I'm looking for, because this is an oyster sauce approximation, is the thickness of oyster sauce. Oyster sauce I would describe as maybe 1 or 2 degrees thicker than coating the back of your spoon. Now, last step is just a tiny bit of oil mixed in is going to give you gloss. If you add the oil before the starch has gone in, you won't get the same effect because the starch is going to emulsify that oil into the liquid. But this is just an easy way to give you a little bit more shine. Sauce is done. Set this aside. Water should have come to a boil. Now we're just going to boil our vegetables. When we're blanching vegetables, the most important thing, usually when we're blanching vegetables, is that it needs to go directly into ice cold water. That's going to lock in the chlorophyll, give you the texture and the color that you want. However, in this case, we're eating this dish hot. Therefore, we are not plunging them in an ice bath. This is 2 quarts of water in. Move them around so that you get as much coverage and surface content as possible. It's bright green. Take it out, literally a couple of seconds. It's still a little bit firm. That's a good texture. It's going to continue wilting. Try to spread it out for it to cool a little bit so it doesn't really overcook itself. I mean, it's a really nice, beautiful bright green right now. It's going to turn more and more and more brown. Okay, we are now going to plate. 2 ways to do this. My mom prefers to have the oyster sauce on the side. I don't mind it drizzled over the top, but just because sometimes, you know, oyster sauce on its own can be kind of high sodium. Now, here's the other thing I'm thinking, is that if I use this gigantic plate, it's going to look like a centerpiece, but we are literally just boiling lettuce and it feels really aggressive. Sauce. Super aromatic, big time garlic sauce. Let's see if people who haven't had cooked lettuce before are going to enjoy this. Caesar's here with us in the front. I just reheated some of this sauce. Have you had boiled lettuce before?
I haven't.
Here is some boiled lettuce. So we're serving this classic Chinese noodle shop style with a pair of scissors. Usually they come in, they're like, "Sang choy ma," and they like, throw the lettuce onto the table and they just like chop it up into little pieces. And this is the type of thing you'd have with your noodles, if that makes sense. Before you taste, I want you to know, this is why we cook. This is why we cook. We cook because we make things more delicious. This is what that romaine was before. Okay? And here, my friend, boiled lettuce. You can have it on its own if you want, but the sauce is just delicious. Oh. Side-by-side comparison with them.
Oh, not to bring up bok choy again, but if you didn't tell me that this was lettuce, I would think it was something.
It's a hearty, nice vegetable.
Heartier vegetable, yep.
If you like this recipe, the recipe is in the description box below. If you've cooked vegetables that people have told you you're not allowed to cook, let us know in the comments below. And if you want some more simple vegetable recipes, we have a delicious chilled eggplant salad that you can get in touch.